everyone. Welcome to Flexify 2, Your Job Search Evolved, where we explore the hidden connections in today's economy. I'm Trina, and in today's episode, we're tackling a critical issue affecting millions of Americans: how our ongoing housing crisis is fundamentally reshaping employment, not just where we work, but whether we can get hired at all. The numbers tell a stark story. Home prices have surged over 50% in the last 5 years. Rents in major cities have increased nearly 25% since 2020. These aren't just abstract statistics, they're creating concrete barriers between qualified workers and available jobs. Let me share a living example with you. A longtime colleague of mine is a software developer with 10 years of experience who received an offer from a tech company in San Francisco. Her dream job is offering $150,000 a year. But after crunching the numbers, she realized she'd need to spend over 50% of her take-home pay just on housing alone. She ultimately turned down the job. Meanwhile, the company struggled to fill the position for months, eventually hiring someone less qualified who lived in the area already. This story is playing out thousands of times daily across America. Let's start with the most fundamental way housing affects your job prospects geographically. Historically, the advice was simple: go where the jobs are. But what happens when you literally cannot afford to live where the jobs are? This creates what I call opportunity deserts, places where jobs exist but remain inaccessible to qualified workers who can't afford local housing. Think about that. Talented people are self-selecting out of opportunities before even applying. This pattern is most pronounced among early and mid-career professionals, precisely those who would traditionally relocate for career growth. A staggering 83% of professionals between the ages of 25 and 40 reported limiting their job searches to areas where housing costs less than 35% of their expected income. For employers, this means your job location has become a primary filter, not your company culture, benefits package, or even your salary offers. Simply, where you're located determines who will consider working for you. This isn't just affecting high-cost coastal cities. The ripple effects are reaching everywhere as housing refugees flee expensive markets and drive up costs in previously affordable areas. This is where remote work enters into the picture. The pandemic forced a nationwide experiment in remote work, and now it's become a permanent solution to the housing job location mismatch. According to a 2023 report, 62% of workers aged 22 to 65 work remotely at least some of the time, with many job seekers specifically filtering for remote options to avoid housing limitations. But what if you're already in a job search? How exactly does housing impact your ability to land a position? There are 5 distinct ways housing costs directly impact your employability. First, address discrimination. Research shows that hiring managers often unconsciously make assumptions about candidates based on their current address. Living in a less desirable area can reduce your callback rate by up to 15%. Second, housing instability severely impacts interview performance. If you're couch surfing or constantly worried about making rent, you simply cannot present your best self in interviews. Third, long commutes forced by unaffordable housing create scheduling constraints that limit interview availability. Then, relocation hesitancy has become a major factor in hiring decisions. Employers are increasingly reluctant to consider candidates who would need to relocate, fearing that housing costs will prevent the move or lead to rapid turnover. And finally, network isolation. When housing costs push workers to distant suburbs or different regions, they lose access to the professional networks concentrated in job centers, networks that remain crucial for landing positions. While employers don't explicitly state it, they consider whether a candidate's living situation suggests they can sustain employment long term. If they'd face a 90-minute commute or need to spend 60% of their salary on housing, companies become hesitant to extend an offer. Interestingly, remote work has begun to neutralize some of these barriers. However, this has created a new divide between those who can work remotely and those whose jobs require physical presence. Now let's examine how companies are adjusting their hiring practices in response. The most significant shift is undoubtedly the remote work revolution. What began as a pandemic necessity has evolved into a permanent feature of our labor market. According to Gallup's 2023 study, approximately 29% of workers are in hybrid arrangements and 13% are fully remote. Meanwhile, McKinsey found that 58% of Americans have the opportunity to work from home at least one day per week. Companies that initially planned to return to full in-office operations have maintained remote options specifically to access talent priced out of their physical locations. LinkedIn's 2022 report found that remote job postings increased more than 10 times during the pandemic and continue to represent approximately 15% of all job listings today. But not all roles can be remote. This has led to several innovative adaptations. Housing-adjusted compensation has become increasingly common, with companies creating location-specific salary bands that explicitly account for housing costs. Microsoft recently offered housing supplements of up to $30,000 annually for workers in its Seattle and Bay Area offices. Some employers are providing direct housing assistance. Amazon purchased apartment buildings near its second headquarters, reserving 20% of units for employees at below market rates. Google has proposed building 20,000 housing units in Silicon Valley. For mid-sized companies, we're seeing the rise of housing benefit packages. That includes rental deposits, moving cost coverage, and even short-term housing subsidies. Perhaps most significantly, there's a massive corporate relocation trend underway. Companies are moving entire operations from high-cost markets to value markets, with lower housing costs but robust infrastructure. Nashville has welcomed over 180 company relocations in the past 2 years. This brings us to one of the most perplexing aspects of our current economy: the simultaneous existence of labor shortages and persistent unemployment in the same geographic areas. This paradox is directly linked to housing. In expensive markets, lower-wage workers simply cannot afford to live within commuting distance of available jobs. Meanwhile, higher-paying positions go unfilled because qualified candidates cannot afford to relocate. In the San Francisco Bay Area, there are currently over 75,000 unfilled jobs, while unemployment in outlying communities remain above the national average. Businesses reduce hours or close entirely due to staffing shortages, while qualified workers just 50 miles away remain unemployed because the commute is financially impossible. This creates what economists call spatial mismatch, a disconnect between where jobs are located and where workers can afford to live. Remote work has emerged as a powerful solution to this paradox, at least for knowledge workers. A Pew Research Center survey found that 17% of Americans have moved or know someone who moved specifically because of remote work opportunities. According to the National Association of Realtors, 60% of millennials who purchased homes in 2022 to 2023 cited remote work flexibility as influencing their home buying decisions. However, the remote work equalizer primarily benefits knowledge workers. For service, retail, manufacturing, and healthcare roles, roughly 60% of the American workforce, physical presence remains essential, and the housing-job location mismatch continues to create structural unemployment. So what does this all mean if you're currently searching for a job? Here are some practical strategies. First, make housing calculations a primary factor in your job search from day one. Research housing costs in the area and calculate what percentage of your potential salary would go toward housing. Most financial advisors recommend keeping housing costs below 30% of gross income. Then, explicitly discuss housing during salary negotiations. Frame the conversation around sustainability. Something like, for this position to be sustainable long-term, I need to ensure my housing costs won't create financial strain. Based on local rental prices, I'm looking for a salary of X. Next, you want to prioritize employers offering housing benefits or assistance. Ask specifically about housing stipends, relocation assistance with continued support, and company partnerships with local housing providers. And finally, leverage the remote work revolution strategically. Remote-first companies, not just companies offering remote options, should be your priority. There's a critical difference. Remote-first companies build their entire culture around distributed teams, whereas companies with remote options often still favor in-office employees for promotion. When evaluating remote opportunities, investigate the company's remote work maturity. Ask about their digital collaboration tools, how performance is evaluated for remote employees, and whether remote workers have equal advancement opportunities. Also consider remote-friendly areas, regions with lower housing costs but robust digital infrastructures. Cities like Chattanooga, Tennessee, Bend, Oregon, or Tulsa, Oklahoma have emerged as remote work hubs, offering affordability alongside amenities attractive to professionals. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to emphasize that this housing employment crisis represents both challenge and opportunity. Yes, housing costs are creating unprecedented barriers to employment mobility, but they're also forcing long overdue conversations about sustainable work arrangements, geographic inequality, and the true cost of concentrated economic development. The remote work revolution offers a powerful but partial solution. For the roughly 40% of workers whose jobs can be performed remotely, geographic constraints have loosened dramatically. For the remaining 60%, policy solutions around affordable housing and transportation remain essential. For job seekers, understanding the housing employment connection and remote work opportunities is now essential for career planning. For employers, addressing housing accessibility and building robust remote work infrastructure have become competitive necessities for talent acquisition. As I close today's episode, consider how the housing crisis has shaped your own career choices. Has the cost of living ever held you back from taking a job or moving to a new city? Start a conversation, share your story, and listen to others. The more we talk about it, the closer we get to real solutions. Because no one should be locked out of opportunity just because of where they live. In my next episode, I'll be breaking down networking for introverts. No awkward icebreakers required. I'll explore strategies that actually work, one-on-one connections, meaningful follow-ups, and leveraging online platforms. Whether you're looking to make connections in your field or just survive your next work event without hiding in the bathroom, this episode's going to be for you. And remember, if your apartment costs more than your therapy sessions, you're not living in a desirable area. You're living in a financial dumpster fire. So either negotiate that salary like your roof depends on it, because it does, or start practicing your I love a 90-minute commute face. Until next time, this is Trina saying, your address shouldn't determine your access to opportunity, but honey, right now it absolutely does. Until my next episode, be kind, keep it positive, and we can win if we don't quit.